Everybody thinks the biggest problem with short weekend mega ship cruises is the crowds. And sure, the crowds are part of it, but I don't think that's the real problem. The real problem is structural. Short weekend mega ship cruises have one built-in weakness. There's no time for the ship to recover from friction. That's the whole issue, because these cruises are designed to impress you immediately. You walk on and it's big, loud, flashy, full of energy. The ship feels exciting right away. That part is real. That part works. And honestly, that's why these sailings are so appealing. You get instant payoff. You're not slowly easing into the cruise. You're dropped straight into the spectacle. And that creates a problem too. When the sailing is only a few nights long, every little point of friction takes up more space in the experience. On longer cruises, an annoying moment can fade into the background. On a weekend cruise, it really doesn't fade. It sticks. Because the trip moves so fast that the ship never gets much time to win you back. And that changes everything. That changes how you feel about the cabin. It changes how you feel about the crowd. It changes how you feel about the service, value, all of it. Because now you're not just asking, am I having fun? You're asking, is this actually coming together well enough for what I paid? And I think that's where a lot of these weekend cruises get exposed. Not because they're terrible, not because they can't be fun. They absolutely can be fun, but fun and worth it are not the same thing. That's the distinction. A short weekend cruise can be exciting, memorable, even genuinely enjoyable, and still feel a little thin as a value buy. Because the format compresses everything. The fun gets compressed, the stress gets compressed, the crowd energy gets compressed, the annoyances get compressed, and once all of that gets packed into 2 or 3 nights, even small problems start landing bigger than they normally would. Now, that's what I mean by friction. Not one giant disaster, just enough drag in the experience that the ship starts to feel less polished than it looked when you boarded. And once that starts happening, your brain starts to recalculate the whole cruise experience. At first, you're thinking, wow, this ship is pretty impressive. And later, you're thinking, okay, but is it actually worth this price? Because a weekend cruise is basically asking you to judge a premium product at full speed. There's no slow build, no real settling in, no extra sea days where the ship wins you over, no room for the better parts of the experience to smooth over the weaker ones. So if the vibe feels off, you notice. If the room feels off, you notice. If the service feels more functional than warm, you notice. If the ship keeps nudging you to spend money, you definitely notice. And again, none of that has to be catastrophic. That's what makes this kind of cruise tricky. Usually it's not one huge failure, but more so a stack of smaller frictions that would be easier to absorb on a longer trip, but feel heavier on a short one. That to me is the real structural problem. A weekend cruise gives you all the intensity of a big ship experience, but simply not enough time for the quality to fully settle in. The whole thing can start to feel top-heavy. A lot of spectacle, a lot of stimulation, a lot of movement, but not always enough refinement underneath it. And that's where people get caught off guard. Because the marketing is not exactly wrong, the ship really is impressive. The shows really can be great. The atmosphere really can be exciting. You probably will have fun. The hard part is whether the experience feels polished enough for you to justify the cost. That's a different question. And I also think the weekend format changes the personality of the ship, not just the crowd level, the personality. These sailings, understandably, often feel more rushed, more impatient, and more high volume. Even when the ship is technically manageable, the overall mood can still feel more intense than enjoyable. Sometimes that energy is exactly what people want. Sometimes it just feels like too much, too fast. On a short cruise, the mood matters a lot, because there's less time for the ship to reset. Less time for a calmer day to change your opinion, less time for the experience to feel layered. You're essentially getting a concentrated version, and that can be exciting. It can also make the whole product feel a little rougher around the edges than people expect. And that's why I think these cruises disappoint some buyers. Not because the ship is bad, not because there's nothing good about it, but because the format puts pressure on the ship to deliver quickly, smoothly, and consistently. And when it doesn't, the weaker parts become part of the main story almost immediately. That's what people should think about before booking one. Not just, will I have fun? Because you probably will. The better question is, Will this format give the ship enough time to feel worth the money? Because if what you want is maximum action, maximum energy, and a quick, flashy getaway, this might be exactly your thing. But if what you want is a cruise that feels settled, polished, and comfortably worth what you paid, short weekend cruises are a riskier buy than they first appear. So for me, that's the biggest problem. It's not just the crowds, it's that this format magnifies friction faster than the ship can justify its price. And once you see that, a lot of these sailings start to make a lot more sense. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys in the next one.